Mr. Beat Rohner, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation, and I'm very happy to be here with you.
You are a financial expert also involved with the banking sector in Switzerland. And my first question to you is regarding this, let's say, holistic framework. It's more than a year now that we have a Russian aggression towards Ukraine, and they are fighting in the Ukraine's territory. A war and aggression which has spilled over, let's say, many effects on our continent. And overall, in this more than 12 months, do you think Europe has become poorer because of these effects?
I mean, when we look at the topic of poverty, I think we have to look at the citizens. I think that's the main question we have to look at. Are citizens poorer nowadays? And the question here is, what can you buy with a Swiss franc or with a euro? And we have seen that actually inflation spiked, especially when it comes to energy prices that went up, and that had a spillover effect also on, for example, food, nutrition. And what we see is definitely that people who have lower income class, they definitely feel poorer because they spend a higher percentage of their monthly budget on food, or also, for example, on transport, and these prices went up actually much higher than the average inflation. For example, if in a country the average inflation is 8 or 10%, food prices sometimes went up 20 or 25. And so, especially the lower income classes, they definitely feel poorer, and that's something where the government should take measures, because that can also have political consequences. And we now see that, for example, in Austria, a country I follow closely, that here the parties that say that, for example, the sanctions should be stopped, they win support because they offer easy solutions.
Sure.
Although, Austria as a country cannot just stop the sanctions on itself, but that's what we see. So it's definitely something that can be felt, especially in countries where income is not so high, and especially for the more vulnerable groups.
But in your view, have the costs gone up because of real struggle with transportation, with the costs of fuel, or is there also some speculation or market panic, let's say?
I would say it's both. Already before the war started, you could get a bit of grasp that prices are going up. For example, energy or other prices, but the war in Ukraine was just a catalyst. So that's really something that made things more hard. It really accelerated it. So that's what how I would see it.
On the other hand, let's say this Russian aggression on Ukrainian soil has also brought to attention the fact that Europe is so dependent on Russian gas and fuel. And although they are, let's say, exploring ways to use alternative energy sources, renewable energy sources, they are still dependent, and in the short term at least, they will still be dependent on these fuels and this gas. But do you think there is a path, or there is a scenario when or where Europe can actually become independent from geopolitically from Russian fuel and gas?
The dependence on Russian oil and gas really depends also on the country. For example, in Switzerland, 60% of our energy is produced from hydropower, and then also we have
just like in Albania.
Yeah, actually, it's a good example. Yes.
Yeah.
And then when we talk about heating, it's obviously it's oil, yes, but it's also more and more renewable energies. But to answer your question, I mean, it's possible, definitely. We are not yet there, we profited that the winter was not a hard winter.
True.
So the gas reserves, they could still they're still there. Europe didn't use as much as during other winter periods. So it takes time to become independent, but I think it is possible, and it will happen because the events that happened on the start of the war on the 24th of February, yes. That's going to be, that was really, that's going to change the geopolitical situation in Europe. And to add on the topic of independence, we now see everywhere that using natural resources, sustainable energy is now the topic. So there is now pressure. It accelerates. Before it was, I can give you the example of Germany. In the north, they have a lot of wind. Mm-hmm. They have the wind power plants, but in the south, they need the energy. And then they had discussions because you need electricity lines going from the north to the south.
Yes.
And then there was the discussion, should it be overground or underground, the years, and the people protesting, sometimes even people from the Green Party, which is interesting. They
Absolutely.
Want that the renewable energy is supported. On the other hand, it's sometimes then the same group that says, but it's...
they don't agree on the infrastructure.
Exactly, we destroy the nature,
Yeah.
but now there is really pressure, and politicians say, now we have to solve it. So always when there is pressure, when something external happens, then you have to do something. So this is one thing we observe, or also in Switzerland. Mm-hmm. I live in a building that is actually, I can say, 100% sustainable.
Yeah.
In the way of during certain times, it even produces more energy than it uses. For example, obviously we have solar panels for the electricity. When the panels produce more energy than the people in the building use, actually they can sell it to the electricity company. Okay. So I even get a small income for this.
So you don't store it somewhere, you sell it to the electricity outlet?
Yes, it goes into the grid, but there also the electricity company has a way to store it. For example, what they would do is that they would pump it up. They would use the energy to pump up water into a hill when there is too much energy, and when they do not have enough, they would just let the water going down, basically to produce energy. That's a way how you can, without a battery, how you can indirectly store energy. And then also, what is it? I think it's a geothermal probe, basically, heat pump. Mm-hmm. So you dig a hole around 100 meters deep, and you can take the energy from the ground. That's how the heating is working. Yes, is solved. And I have between 20 and 23 degrees in my apartment, so it's nice. Works. So 3 layers of windows isolation is important. 3 layers of glass for the windows. So this is actually now the standard when a building is constructed. You don't construct a building anymore with an oil heating or with gas. That's over. For new buildings. Now the question is only for the existing ones. Yeah.
So if I may wrap it up, what I understood from your comments is that there is ways to explore alternate energy sources, but it should be matched by political will, let's say.
Exactly, by political will, by will, perhaps also by support. Mm-hmm. I think that's important.
When it comes to what we were talking earlier about the increasing prices, we have been living with this inflation for more than a year now. In your analysis, do the financial markets expect a continuing trend of inflation, or will we see a normalization soon?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the inflation is still at a certain level. I mean, interest rates now went up, so it will not stop today or tomorrow, but definitely medium term, the inflation will go down again because of the interest rates hikes. So I think that's what I observe. There can always be surprises. Imagine if we now would go into a recession again, then what do you do as a central bank? Recession, usually you lower the interest rate. On the other hand, lower interest rate could lead to an even higher inflation. So that's a bit the difficult situation.
So how do you find balance?
Exactly. That's I mean, the old law was like, you put up the interest rate, and then you in high interest rate, then inflation will go down. I just hope that we do not get into in a stagflation, which would basically mean an economic stagnation matched with an inflation, because then you are in a very difficult situation. But for me, that's not what I would see at the moment. So I think I think the worst things are over. So I'm always positive. So I believe things are getting better rather than worse.
That's optimistic.
I'm always optimistic, yes. You have to be.
When it comes to countries, what is the best financial move that countries can do in such times of crisis?
What they can do.
When when I mean countries, I don't mean central banks only, but I mean government.
Exactly. Yeah. What I believe is important in these times is that you support the people that really need it. I mean, really the poor. I don't think it's a good idea just to give, I don't know, 200 euros to everybody, to the rich and to the poor.
That's not a good idea.
No, I do not think, because then you spend a lot of money, but it doesn't really reach the target. You spend money, you give 200 euros to someone who has a high income, who is maybe a millionaire. Does she need it? Not really. And the government then takes on that to make these grant programs, and I don't think that's the right solution. So really, to sum it up, really support the people in need. First thing. Second thing, do not delay any programs or infrastructure investments the country anyway planned to do. Just continue with it. Perhaps if you have the possibility as a country, you can even accelerate it.
So you mean will also be don't cut off on the capital expenses?
Exactly, yes. Yes. This would be bad, because then what does it mean? You do less investments as a country, can lead to unemployment. I don't think, and you need infrastructure also for your economy to grow when the economy picks up again.
More like, let's say, a reference to the New Deal in times of the Great Depression, where the government actually increased the state's expenditures.
Yes. I mean, it's a bit of a Keynesian, or when you talk about Keynes, like in times of when things are not so well, the state has to invest rather than also just cut on expenditures. Yes.
And if we go to people, how about them with their personal finances? How should they behave in such times of crisis? Investment, savings?
I mean, the question is, what's the interest rate? If the interest rate, let's make an example, inflation is 10% and your interest rate you receive from the bank is 6%, you lose 4% of purchase power a year. So in most cases, usually the interest rate is below inflation often. Does mean you lose money on cash. So cash is not really the best opportunity. So one thing is go really into real estate. Could be one thing. It could be gold in times of crisis, or you just go for diversification. Me personally, I also have stocks. I still buy stocks. They can be a security. Even stocks or just a diversified portfolio can be a security or an action of security.
Like a safety net.
Safety net, yes. This could be a possibility. if you expect that interest rates are going to even appreciate more, if you expect they are going to appreciate more than the market, then do not go into bonds, because higher interest rate will lead to the fact that the valuation of bonds will go down. And also it depends on the country where you live, or what is your reference currency, because, for example, the Swiss franc, just inflation in Switzerland is only around 3%, because our currency appreciated versus the euro, versus the dollar, versus the lek.
I see.
And so we did not feel the inflation that much. So if you live in a country that usually, where the currency usually goes down, loses value, you could also think of just buying some other, could be euros, could be dollars, of money of another currency.
In Albania, let's say the inflation rate is the declared one is about 8%, and the real one might be over 12%, especially for the common food and beverage that we all use.
Consumer staples, yeah.
Yeah. But I have also a last question. Maybe it's more general, but all of us like to think. All of us Albanians like to think of the time when we will join the European Union. So, in your view, is Balkans ready to join the Eurozone? And what would happen if the Balkans, at least the West Balkan 6, suddenly would join the EU? What would happen to our finances and economy?
I mean, that's. I feel that this is a big wish in the region, and I strongly believe that EU really needs to give a perspective to the Western Balkan countries. First of all, I think it still takes time. I think I would wish it would go faster, but yeah, there is still a lot of resistance of some countries in the EU.
We have learned to wait.
Okay. So, but first of all, I mean, usually a country joins the EU, and then after a few years, it also, if it wants, it can join the Eurozone. Pros and cons. I mean, the pro is definitely you have the same currency. Currency is stable. You do not have to. Also, the companies, there is no, for example, you do not have to pay for hedging.
Sure.
So there is really security, which is a good thing. The bad thing is if you join the Eurozone, you somehow give up the monetary policy, because then you're in a club of, I would say, around 20 countries are now in the Eurozone, and they have to decide, do we increase the supply of money, meaning interest rates rather going down, or do we not? So it really, but it can happen that not all EU or Eurozone countries are in an inflation, so, or in a recession. So you also give up something which nowadays the Central Bank of Albania has this possibility. They can decide to raise the interest rate. Absolutely. They can lower it. That's also a reason why, for example, Sweden is not. I mean, it's a very safe and stable country, but they are not in the Eurozone. Also because they have a strong connection with Norway, also not in the Eurozone, because not in the EU. So they have a bit of the possibility there to steer it on their own, and also they have observed times when they have been in a different economic, you can say, economic situation or circle than the rest of Europe. So this is a bit, the pros and cons of joining the Eurozone. But I'm always, when I come to Albania, I feel that there's a lot of energy and things are really moving fast. I've been here a year ago, and I can already see that things have improved.
Still a lot of hope.
Yes. You always have to be positive. That's extremely important. So
Well, in this case, let's hope for the best.
Yes.
And thank you so much for being here with us at Scam Television and for this interview.
Thank you very much, Brandon Kotori, for having me. Faleminderit. Thanks a million.